This is a story about the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we live out in the world, and the space between those two. It's about how we love, how we lose, and how we recover, or not, through the stories we make up in our heads. I'm Robin Rice, and this is also my story. Chapter 35, A Long Tale in Two Parts. Part 1. Betrayal. It's a classic story element. An act of disloyalty. We are misled or outright deceived. Someone we trusted steals from us. Maybe it's something tangible. Maybe it's more like our soul. Trust can be stolen, and with it, a beautiful innocence we had somehow kept safe until now. Someone acts out of meanness or jealousy or vengeance. What a word, vengeance. Sounds as bad as it is. All this is standard story fare. Nothing new. Nothing unusual. Anyone can tell you about it. Everyone has seen it for themselves, though some more than others. What people don't talk about so much, though, is the great betrayal. The one that stands above all others. The one we see folks never get over, never talk about, never attempt to seek balance in the injustice. The betrayal of self. We call ourselves a fool. We blame ourselves for our hope and faith. We curse ourselves for loving, for being so stupid, for falling into the same trap again. Here's the truth. We are all liars. Liars to ourselves, and we create these lies all the time. We make stories out of thin air. Imagination, some call it, but it's trickier than that. We shape story details to fit our expectations. We retell and retell and retell smaller stories to ever better fit our mostly unconscious story strategy, themes, needs, and desires. We've talked about this already, but it bears repeating. We knowingly omit critical details that don't line up with our desired point of view. We add seductive grammar, making something simple very simple. Something complex, entirely, outrageously complex. Tiny betrayals, maybe. But watch out. One day they will come back to bite us in the ass. I have identified one of the more devastating forms of self-betrayal as invisible bargaining. Invisible because we don't know we're doing it. Invisible because we don't know who we're doing it with. Invisible because we rationalize the bargains that don't pan out so that we never have to watch them come to light. Bargains like, if I go to college, I'll get a good job. If I'm a good life partner, my partner won't cheat or leave or die. If I'm a good child, my parents will love me, protect me, support me. If I'm a good provider, my family will be happy. If I'm a good worker, I'll never get fired. If I mow the lawn neatly, my neighbors will think well of me. If I eat right and exercise, I'll be healthy forever. If I pray and pray hard, God will spare me. This is how life should be, right? How it would be if we were in charge. Fair, just. Good people get good things, bad people get bad things, and so-so people get so-so things. Karma, justice, fairness, rightness, right on. But what happens when our story doesn't go that way? When the invisible bargains fall through? When it's so big a breach, we can't rationalize it away. Betrayed by our very own selves, and then the cascade of resulting emotions. We are surprised, aghast, dumbfounded, angry, fucking pissed off. By now, you probably get where my emotions tended to go. But also lost, bewildered, uncertain, confused. Sounds terrible, and it is. But also, it's not. Because when our invisible bargains fall apart, we can begin our work to make them visible. In other words, conscious. This is one of the main ways I have found that consciousness grows, Not through angels on high appearing in a stadium or a flash of brilliant light in our bathroom shower. No, it's through the exposure of our invisible assumptions. Through our deals disappearing, leaving us with something more true, like it or not. When we look closely, we will realize we never actually signed on any invisible dotted line with anyone, because no such agreement was ever made explicit, and there was no one else there to sign. It was a game of unknowing we played with ourselves. In our defense, one could hardly blame us for our ignorance. In a give-and-take world, a buy-and-sell world, a this-means-that world, it's all we've ever known. Because our bargaining was invisible, we didn't even know we were making a deal. How can that be our fault? Besides, it's not like we don't have enough on our plate with just the visible crap. So, what happens when the good job doesn't come? The partner leaves. The family isn't happy. We get fired. We get sick. Maybe really sick. Maybe life-threateningly sick. What do we do then? Because this, more than anything else, reveals who we are. We can hunker down and carry "life sucks" signs on our backs, gathering angry rocks in our pockets. Better, if we can be conscious enough to remember how the alchemy of transformation works, we can recognize that this alchemical fire has arrived to start us on a new journey. Desirable or not, we can accept that we will have to evolve enough to deal with these things in a new way. We can find new resources, try new routes. Necessity is the mother of invention, and in this we are reinventing ourselves. Now we have the opportunity to make more conscious deals. Also, we can stop setting ourselves up. That's the crux of wisdom. Hard won, but won all the same. Easier said than done, too, depending on how deep the betrayal, how big the lie, how ignorant we are of the invisible bargain. But, well, the alternative is that rock over there you can crawl under. Go for it and good luck. As for me, entering into my 55th year, I knew all about invisible bargaining. I had lived it. I had excavated it. I had written about it. I had even taught it. But this multiplicitous, whiplashing loss, again? This compounding interest of grief? This which ran so deep it could raise the dead, my dead, in me again? This was another level. This was too much. My own loving nature, my own faith and connection, my hope for mankind as a whole, my trust in the guidance that had come to me upon awakening. They all seemed to have betrayed me. I'd done my part, hadn't I? Oh, the invisible bargains, raging in like a collective tsunami, pushing everything in its way along the path of destruction. And I was at the core of it. I made those deals. I had no idea what to do with that. No idea at all. Enter the labyrinth. This is now a tale that can only be told in two parts, two sides of a coin, or maybe a story out and a story in, a story up and a story down, a story about Robin and a story about the one greater than Robin. Both stories held true at the same time. So, part one, let's call it Dante's Inferno, revisited. Even though there are a lot of ways to approach writing this part of the story, it isn't going to be a fun one. The chapter is long because those years were. If you've had enough of the tough stuff, feel free to take a hall pass and skip ahead. Then again, if you have been to that famed inferno, been through that dark night of the soul, or if you are there now, as so many are, I think you'll appreciate knowing, at least, it's not only you. Meaning, you're not the only one, and, also, it's not your fault. Still here? All right, here goes. In July, I lived on a farm with my beloved. The beans grew, the porch swing swang, the rooster crowed. Kisses flowed, though maybe not as wildly as in the earliest years. And there was still real love and meaning in them. There were stretch marks to the union, though none I didn't expect from a long-term relationship. In October, I lived on a farm with my beloved and in a tiny garage apartment in Silicon Valley, where I went to work and didn't know a soul. Airlines bridged the gap. By January 1st, I lived in 200 square feet of solitude. Then Terry died. Then Salome left our friendship. Then Salome died. And all of my family, my adult kids, lived back on the other side of the country. Yeah, that pretty much sets the stage. All my emotions returned full force. Actually, that's not quite true. Sadness and grief returned full force. There were no other emotions. I was there, and the greater I was there too. So much so, I was acutely aware of every little thing all the time. In the moment, this consciousness felt cruel. Salt in the gaping flesh wound, rotted icing on the cake. Today, I know it was consciousness that saved me, but let's save that for part 2 of the story. One by one, the stories of Scotty and I, as an us, fell apart. It's the same in any decoupling, but I'd believed his vows of forever completely. I'd lived that feeling fully. Now I felt the ripping away of a dream held so close to the heart. Like giving birth, it doesn't matter how many women have been through it. This pain sucks. I was no different. And that especially sucked. Invisible bargain number 539. If you follow the path of consciousness, you will be different and things will not ever suck for you again. I ruminated. What happened to old Bessie saying I could kick him out the door and he'd come back through the window? He wasn't coming back. He wasn't even calling to check in. Bessie's bullshit divination. Forever? When was the last time he wrote that on a card? I couldn't remember. In fact, I couldn't remember a lot of things. Memory is a shifty thing in grief. I walk beside you no matter what we encounter along the way, he once wrote. I didn't know what exactly we had encountered. What was big enough for this? I didn't get it. I just didn't get it. No one seemed to. Not friends, not even Scotty. At least that's what he claimed. You are the half to my whole. Really? Must be a plug-and-play half, interchangeable at will. Bitterness tugged at me. I flirted with it, dangerously. All these stories and the hundreds more that we had collectively created slipped away from my life, which meant my life was no longer recognizable to me. It would have been less of a loss if our love had been less, sure, but who could wish for that? Even I could not imagine making that trade-off. Who trades 12 beautiful years of their life, when they really were beautiful, to hurt less once it was over? Yet, I also had to ask, was it love or only attachment? Because I was truly feeling the cost of attachment now. I searched for the formidable one within, but once she got me down that long driveway, she was gone. This was too much. Too much grief, too much loss, even for her. I dreamed of Nell high in the light, wishing she hadn't died, but wishing that for me. Selfish bitch. Me, that is, wishing her back to this hellhole of suffering we call planet Earth. I saw no future for myself. Everything there was grayed out. There were plenty of visions that were really only wishful thinking and desperate need, and they were all flimsy as an overloaded paper plate at a potluck. My guides, were there ever any at all, remained silent about what was next, what I might look forward to, and why this journey was beneficial. Lion still ignored me, so fine, fuck you. It is said that in our darkest moments, we don't need solutions or advice. We need human connection, a quiet presence, a gentle touch, I had none of that, and it was touch I missed the most. My body was starving from the outside in. Was it me, my fault? Was I closed down? Some secret wish to be left alone, to not be hurt again? A friend said I wasn't putting out the right energy to meet anyone new. Well, fuck you too. Was it life ignoring me? Shutting me out? Why? Why? No movement, no wind, not from any direction. Why? I knew better than to ask why. Classic storytelling mistake. I had advised others it was a useless tactic, but I asked anyway, because my heart needed to know. Was this spirit's doing, exacting some fathoms deep debt? Was it grandmotherly kindness, like the monks who used a violently hard smack of a bamboo stick across your shoulders to wake you up when you were drifting off? I'm awake enough, goddammit, leave me the fuck alone. Was it as Coleman Barks wrote, translating Rumi, that the lamb picked for slaughter is God's favorite? I listened to that poem again and again, trying to make sense of my hell being less than hell I didn't know. I found no answers because there were none. Why do beautiful people get cancer and die? Why do children pass too young? Why do lovely human beings want to take their lives? Why does a relationship end? Dig all you want, you won't find what you're looking for. Because what you are looking for is relief, and what you need is endurance. Sometimes the pain was exacting, like a switchblade to the liver. Sometimes it was disturbingly monotonous, like a jackhammer right outside your window. Sometimes the pain was crushing. Often it was, like a load of dark bricks on your chest, bricks that wanted you to die. Sometimes the pain was explosively intermittent, like a cracked tooth. Sometimes the pain was dull, like a hangover when trying to exercise. But always the pain was there. It never went away. The mystics said, invite it in like a guest. The mystics who said that were further along than me, that's for sure. I recall one day, the exact moment, in fact, that I succumbed to being a victim of my life again. I was speaking of how this wasn't what I wanted, how it was something I would never have chosen. I could find no other story that felt true, no best possible story. I tried to imagine a way in which I might have wanted this solitude day after day, this loss of love on all fronts, this touchless life, how it might have been for the best. Nothing felt true. I don't want this, is all that felt true. From somewhere far off, I felt a nudge toward, don't go there. Don't become a victim of this. It's a dark hole, and you won't recover for a very long time. I saw it as a pit I was tipping forward into, ready to fall, not unlike Ricky, who had once been tipping the two legs of his chair backwards. Though his was a backward tipping, both led to darkness. So what was I to do? Lie to myself? Adopt a fake it till you make it? I couldn't. I just couldn't. I tipped forward, fell into my own hell, all the way to the bottom of the Axis Mundi, the place where no one comes in after you, because no one can. Honestly, even as I am writing, it is hard to tell you what I thought about all day long. But it's easy to tell you that I had all day every day to think, to try to climb back up out of that pit, to fail over and over again. Only work was a relief. Thank the heavens for that. But more on that in part 2 of the story. The first year, as you might expect, was the worst. I tried to tell the few people I was still in conversation with that this was not only about losing Scotty. This was about my entire life journey. This was a spiritual passage, a dark, dark night. They tried to understand, but since I rarely shared stories about the first 35 years of my life, they could not. All I could say was that nothing would be built on this sand in a storm. All they could do was trust that I knew what I was doing, even though it didn't seem to be getting me anywhere. I thought about the idea that I had been David Lloyd George, and if so, his karma being mine. I read more books about him, found even more connections, and had even more synchronicities. Given how rare any synchronicity was, I most definitely perked up when that happened. If I had been him, I could see what had put me in this hell again. His selfishness, his greed for love and lovers, his great care for humanity, yet great lack of care for the pain of others closest to him. His sending young boys to their death in war. I didn't send anyone to war, but I had plenty of love parallels. So, great, just great. How do you get out of that viper's pit of self-regret? I tried to get help, professional help, but as in my early life, most therapists were more fascinated by my story than able to be of service. One psychologist I spoke to, though, a well-respected woman who worked with many of the Silicon Valley elite, knew exactly what I was facing. She understood awakening and the alchemical journey. Most people don't make it through this stage of the journey, she warned point blank one day. She insisted that if we worked together, we would have to start at the beginning, with Roxanne and Nell. She wouldn't even begin to help with the current pain about Scotty, however acute it was. It was her method and her way and her wisdom. I tried for a few months, but I couldn't. I just couldn't go back there. Not yet. Anyway, I knew this was my hell to go through, my inferno, mine to deal with, mine to survive. I wasn't being stubborn. I was being true to something greater. I moved from the tiny box apartment down the street to a bigger place. I shipped the little I had in storage to myself. I unpacked the fragile boxes Scotty had packed. Not surprising, everything was broken. Fucking metaphors. As anyone might expect, moving changed nothing. By this time, I stank of alchemical putrefaction. So did everyone around me, at least to my nose. I needed people. I hated people. Come here, go away, fuck you, fuck you. I did my absolute best to unwind the connective, spiritual, relational, and loving intertwining that Scotty and I had done. I undid every ritual and threw each of our rings, save the first, into rivers around the world. One behind Terry's house where we once made love all day. Another into the raging, ice-cold, bright blue waters of Norway. I can't remember where the others are. They're out there somewhere. Nothing moved anything. Every day I woke up, still there, Robin on Robin. Let me tell you, in extended, prolonged solitude, you become very, very aware of your own company. You think of everything you might have done differently, in detail. Every little thing in excruciating detail. Every wrong step you've ever made, every error in judgment, every negative thought, every flaw alive like cells under a microscope. Every single thing you could have been better about, should have been kinder about. Every regret like a screaming neon sign flashing in your brain. Flash, 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 flash. You go to bed for relief, but the dream teachers no longer come. Then you get up and do it again the next day. And the next. The few friends I still checked in with from back home wanted me to hate Scotty, or at least be livid with him. But I couldn't. It wasn't my style, and it wasn't true. I loved him. I missed him. A few took up the fuck him asshole cause on my behalf. It was a moral support, a spiritual sorority. It was small, petty even, but I appreciated the sentiment. Friends are great like that, lifting your rage when you can't lift a sock. More than one person said they thought Scotty and I would get back together. I knew we wouldn't. I wished we could, if only for the emotional reprieve, if only to stop the neon flashing. But I knew we were far too far gone. I could forgive a lot, but not the way he left me in hell, alone. I could not want a man who would do that. I didn't even want a friend who would do that. I would have indulged in a vice: alcohol, sex, crappy food, anything. But I had none. I eventually graduated from eating one salad a day to adding an orange here, an apple there, some nuts, a baked sweet potato if I had the energy to make something hot that took time. Meals out looked more normal, but overall it was a meager way of eating. Meager, like the rest of my life. I often said I wanted someone new in my life, that I was ready. Hindsight, I was so not ready. Didn't I deserve that if Scotty had it? Didn't matter what I thought. I was never attracted to anyone. Not anyone. Would I ever be again? And if anyone was interested in me, I surely didn't pick up on it. So was this the end of my love life forever? Was Scotty the last man I'd ever make love to? A crushing blow, that one. Cruel for a woman who loves to love so much. And Robin Rice, celibate? That's a plot twist no one could have seen coming. Also, there was no such thing as self-pleasure. Climax only reminded me of Scotty, threw me into painfully missing him. Made me cry. No thanks. I always thought I'd be with someone again, eventually. Seemed obvious in some way. Might even get married again, like legally. I had an intuitive picture of that come to me from out of the blue one day. But maybe that was just psychic pain relief. I trusted nothing intuitive without massive self-checking. Anyway, I wasn't sure how I would get myself to be in a relationship again. Maybe you forget how losing love threatens to kill you, like you forget the pain of giving birth, just enough to do it again. That would be nice. Maybe. Stupid, probably. It was early days, though, I assured myself. I would recover from this part, right? I told the universe to not bring anyone until it was the real deal. No one came, so I had to assume my request was being honored. Or was I just making up stories and no one wanted me anyway? It was hard to tell. A lot of things were hard to tell. Many times I thought, this isn't Earth, this is the Bardo, my own personal purgatory. I'm not really alive. I'm not dead. I'm in some in-between place. Finally, it was the second year. Time does heal all wounds, it's true, but a year isn't much time, whatever anyone else might say. Terry's death compounded the fracture. The long, empty days didn't change, and loneliness continued as an ever-constant companion. Thankfully, though, the sting of losing Scotty was wearing off. Still, no guides appeared in a burst of light in my shower, or anywhere. I could have used that. Guess they blew the metaphysical wad at the start of my journey. I should be better than this, my more casual friends thought. Some of them came right out and said. I don't know which Robin will show up, one said, distancing himself. Fair, very fair. Disappointed I was no longer the Robin Rice they once knew. The majority of those semi-close dropped away. I let them go easily. I wouldn't have wanted the me that was showing up half of the time either. Because I could still mentor with magic, because I could effectively change others' lives, just not my own, I often wondered, where's my Robin Rice? The one to help me, do magic for me. After Salome, I never found anyone. Moved again, this time to Palm Springs, though as I was warned, nothing changed. I was as invisible there as I had been in Palo Alto. I would walk down the street or go to the midweek town fair and other events, but I swear I was the walking dead. No one saw me, no one greeted me. They looked right through me. After countless attempts at pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get your ass out there, I stopped making the effort. Where had I gone? Eventually, I could no longer see myself in the mirror. Sure, eyes, a nose, mouth, but no composite self. No person in the mirror. Time became an unbearable prison. Time not real? Well, someone let me out of this not real jail then, please. The one closer friend I had that lived in Palm Springs, one reason to move there, was lovely, and she really tried to help. But she had this idyllic life. Slap me in the face perfect. It wasn't her fault. Good for her, truly. But it hurt to watch her and her husband living in a loving relationship while death was sitting on my shoulders. The kids came to visit on occasion, and I lived for those times. I drank them in. So beautiful. So very, very beautiful. As adults, they were doing well, thank God. But then they left, as they should, to go back to their own lives. I was happy for them. I didn't want to be a burden. End of the second year, at the start of the third, I was finally no longer in acute pain. But there was a constant dull ache from no contact and no touch. Side note, massages are great, but let me tell you, they are not touch, not connection touch, not belonging touch, not meaningful touch, not soulful touch. Babies die without touch, remember? Solitary confinement is torture for inmates, the highest form of it, did you know? I knew. How long does it take for solitude to oxygen deprive your brain? I was finding out. At the same time, there was something akin to self-reproach at the ridiculousness of my suffering. First, who was suffering? No one here. Second, shouldn't I be further along by now? Third, other people are suffering far more in their lack of consciousness, their addictions, their stories, and through real-time war and famine. Others had their life partner leave or die just last week or yesterday, maybe this morning. They deserved the freshness of condolence, not me and my stale bottom-of-the-axis mundi. I didn't feel guilt or shame. Those emotions were long gone. But there was a finger pointing toward my puny little self still holding on, still sobbing in self-pity, even as I was perfectly cared for in the comfort of my beautiful, safe, well-stocked home. Get on with it already, I would goad my suffering self. No dice. My get up and go was a sailboat without wind, and there was no way to manufacture it. Life runs on stories, and I'd lost all faith in them, all hope for them, and all ability to connect through them. To be aware was the only option. I was aware of my awareness in the same way I was suffering over my suffering. No way out. Then, one glorious day, it was no day in particular, I found a single, solitary, fleeting, flickering moment of happiness cross through me. Of a very low voltage, but it was there. Aware, I could not have missed it. All of a sudden, I remembered, there's this thing called happiness. Clearly, I had forgotten. Forgotten so completely, I was without knowing that I had forgotten. Wow, how long had it been? I couldn't catch it or keep it, but I recognized it. That was something. There was something about that in the promise of alchemy. As much as it delighted me, it also frightened me. How had I been so absent that I didn't even know that I'd not felt happiness in years? Was I okay? Really okay? I wasn't sure. From that point on, every so often an internal voice would come out of nowhere and I would ask myself, "You okay?" I would check in and answer myself. Sometimes okay, sometimes not. When not, I found myself putting my hand on my heart. That was something, I was sure. I still cared about me. Yes, that was something. Robin was still here somewhere. By the way, if this story is starting to feel monotonous, like, can't she get on with it already? I get you. But it was like that. And no one wanted me to get on with it more than me. By this time, my obligations of teaching were complete, and I had to decide if I would continue. I didn't need the income. My one-on-one work was booming and more than sufficient, even working with only a handful of clients each week. It wasn't that I didn't feel I could be effective in teaching, though students did try my patience more than usual. It was that teaching the journey toward greater consciousness, always my subject, whatever the theme, required selling the journey. How could I sell someone on this path? Really more of an endurance race, which went by way of fucking hell and which might in fact end in fucking hell. I didn't have the heart to sell that. In this leave of absence, I let another aspect of my identity, that of Robin Rice, teacher, die. It was the honorable thing to do, I told myself. I let the social change projects go, too. My heart was too heavy to do heartfelt work. Thankfully, others picked up the work of a few ongoing projects, thanks especially to Marnie and Yvonne, who kept your holiday mom afloat. And social media? Forget it. Zero interest in my hundreds of thousands of followers. Often I thought, this was taking too long. Should this be taking so long? All the alchemy books said it would be long. But how long is too long? I was kind of glad not to know. With Palm Springs holding no more life than Palo Alto, and once I felt strong enough to live nearer to Scotty again, I moved back to be with the kids more frequently. But one son would move away very soon after. Good for him. I never wanted my journey to impact my kids, but more solitude for me. It felt good to be home and good to feel good more and more often. The trees especially touched me. I'd missed them more than I might have imagined before leaving. But then, after 2 years of minimal human contact and after outfitting a 5-bedroom home so that I could again offer in-house weekend retreats, COVID hit. Side note, Terry warned me of this in advance, but I didn't get it. She warned a group through me when I was channeling her one day that something big was coming, and when I asked what to do, she said, "Duck." It didn't make sense then, but of course, it does now. So, COVID solitude. Really? Really? My son came to visit once a week, but felt he had to stay at a distance. No hugs for either of us. I saw the toll it took on him. I could no longer measure the toll it took on me. I learned to live yet another long, long stretch without humans, without an embrace. "We are not made to endure this," I would inwardly scream. No one answered. Alone now 24/7, at times I truly thought I was losing my mind. The days were endless. Around 5 p.m., or whenever there was no work left in me, I'd quit, then think of the evening of torture ahead and, very often, start to cry. I knew I'd have to find a way to stay awake until at least 9 without going absolutely insane, lest I wake up at 4 a.m. and the next day would be even longer. The crying was important, though. I knew. It was a breaking point crying, which is what it takes to get at the core shit in alchemy. The path encourages tears, the element of salt, and finding anything at all worth crying about just to get it out of you. So, well, glad to put my excruciating pain to good use. I would half joke that the universe found a way to put me in a hermit's hut on a mountaintop, without the hut or the view. I felt sure the self-chosen hermits were doing better than me, but I didn't know how to be more like them. And maybe they were not. How would I know? I also thought about not having a mom or a dad or siblings to help. At least none on this side of reality. No one, really. When that thought crossed my mind, my gut dropped out from under me. This story was old, too long being told. I had thought I'd escaped my history of loss. I had not. It was all deeply ripe, fully relevant again. What is life if life only guarantees loss? I asked the self that was more and more not there. What the hell we were doing? Self-destructing, going blind, dying for real? And why? What for? There was no answer, and no one to answer. If this life of suffering is some kind of experiment, I woke up one day to say to the thin air, I vote no. At one point, deep in a medicine journey, I asked if my soul was dying. I was told it was already dead. I didn't know a soul could die, I said. Well, yours has. The dark night of the soul is one thing, but death of the soul? What the fuck was I to do with that? In the same journey, Lion appeared, still not talking to me, but with wings. What did that mean? What did that mean? If I could have left this path, I would have. In fact, in some ways I did. But I also knew it didn't work like that. This was no religion, No thing you can subscribe to and then unsubscribe to. This was life, real life. Like making it halfway on a trek across the desert, there's no value in turning back. You asked for this, one part of me would insist. When, another part chimed in, and why? No answer. So was I just slowly killing myself, circling around nothing? For years? So, well, anyway. Just as that story eventually ran out, so this one must. Sometimes it's best to just stop talking. Fortunately, or I doubt I would be here to write this, there was that other side of the coin I have spoken of. The simultaneous second side of the story. The intersection of what is not, what never was, and what can never be. The precise location in space and time when there opened a role for consciousness itself to step into. This was my proof that Dante's Inferno is only one end of the axis mundi. Enter your labyrinth at BeWhoYouAre.com.